In this tutorial I'm going to make a simple side-scrolling shoot 'em up with a kind of space-based theme to it, although yours can be whatever you want it to be. I'm going to develop elements of the game as I go along, and it's going to feature a keyboard controlled player, a single kind of level with a scrolling background, and then the game is going to randomly generate attack waves that the player has to shoot. And I'm going to start by creating the player object, and first of all I'm going to make a graphic for that. So I'm going to create a sprite, and sprites are the bitmap based images that GameMaker uses for the graphics. And GameMaker has its own graphics editor that you can use, but you can also import things from other programs like Photoshop, Illustrator, Microsoft Paint. So let's start by going to the assets window here. So these folders: sprites, sounds, backgrounds, paths, scripts, shaders, fonts, etc, etc. And these are all things that the game is going to use. So I'm going to go to the sprite folder, right click and create a sprite, and this brings up the sprite properties box. First of all I'm going to name my sprite, and it's important how you name things in GameMaker for two reasons. Firstly, you want to give the name of whatever you're going to create something that's fairly clear and understandable, because what you'll end up doing when you code, you'll work on something and you'll come back to it like a day later and look at it, and if you've not named things in an appropriate way, you'll look at it and go, what on earth is that? So try and name things as clear and as precise as possible. Secondly, the name must be unique. You can't have things with the same name. So you can't have player 1 the sprite and player 1 the object and player 1 the variable, because that won't work when you come to code. So the way I kind of name sprites is I give them the name of what it is, and then I underscore SPR, so I know it's a sprite when I see it in the code. So player underscore sprite. There are some other parameters here, but we're going to go straight to the sprite editor. So I click on edit sprite, and this brings up the sprite editor window here. I'm going to create a new sprite by clicking on this white paper sheet icon at the top here, and it's asking me the size of the sprite I want to create, and it's in pixels. I'm going to keep with the 32 by 32. Obviously you can change that to any size you want. The bigger the sprite, the more of the kind of computer's memory it makes up. So we want to be working at this scale. This is quite adequate, 32 by 32. Click on OK, and it brings up image 1, and just double click on that and it brings up the image editor. You can use the middle scroll wheel on your mouse to zoom in and out of the image, or you can use these icons at the top here with the magnifying glass. Zoom in, zoom out. Next to that there's a grid function, which is quite useful. And you've also got the toolbar on the side here, which you'll be fairly familiar with in terms of like graphics packages. So I've got the pen tool on the side here. I've got the color palette. There's a set of colors here. I've also got a color picker, so I can create a unique kind of color that's not in here. So I select red, and you can just draw freehand on here, and the grid system will help you do precise editing. There is also a airbrush tool, and it's got a hardness control to create how sort of soft it is. Let's check another color, like so. You also have opacity, so I can make it transparent. So that's doing there if I put that on top of there. Okay. I've got an eraser, so I can rub it out. You can also adjust the size of all these tools here. That's the color picker. I can draw lines, like so. I can create a polygon shape. There's squares. There's also settings here, so you can do it like a filled square with a border with the two colors. There you go. Or just an outline. You can also make circles and rounded kind of rectangles. Then you've got the marquee tool that allows you to select an area, cut it, Control X, Control V paste, and you can reposition that. I mean, it's fairly similar to Microsoft Paint in its operation. It's not quite as complex as the sort of things you can do in Photoshop, but you can do quite a lot with it. It's adequate for making sprites anyway. You also have a magic wand tool that selects contiguous pixels of the same colour, so I can like cut that area out. It's sort of similar to the thing in Photoshop. And then I've got a paint fill tool and replace colour. So if I click on the blue I've just created, I could change it to red and it will change all pixels in that colour. I've also got a text tool. You can't see it because I've not changed the colour. There we go. And that's about it really. I mean, it's fairly simple stuff. There's also got some transform commands, and these affect the entire image. Let's bear that in mind. So if I can rotate it here, like so. I've also got some image effects, like colorize, invert, so I can change the color around. Blur, fade, sharpen, I can create a glow. So that gives a kind of glow effect to there. It's a bit difficult to see on this image. So I'm going to import something I created earlier. So File, Open. About importing, it will accept a number of formats. So if you go to supported file types, you've got bitmap images, GIF images, JPEGs, PNG images. PNG is quite useful because it saves something called the alpha channel, which is basically pixels that appear transparent. So you can use that as a sort of mask to create your sprites. Otherwise everything would just be like blocky squares. It won't accept vector images. So sort of things you create in Illustrator that are vector based. You'd have to flatten them into a GIF, a JPEG or a PNG. So I'm just going to load this PNG that I created earlier. And I've created like a really sort of simple geometric spaceship. And I've given it a sort of glow effect to make it appear kind of like neon. So once I've created that, I'll click on the tick button and OK it. So go ahead and create a sprite for your player character.